Set during the invasion of Normandy at the end of World War II, Saving Private Ryan opens with one of the most jizz-in-your-pants amazing war sequences ever filmed. Seriously, this lasts 25 minutes and I would have been perfectly okay with it if the entire movie was just this beach sequence. Look at it! You know what, Stephen? This is so good. Maybe I can find it within my heart to forgive you for Indiana Jones 4 and 5. I mean, just look at it. Maybe we can work out our differences. Come here, buddy.
Really?
The movie then follows Captain John Miller, played by Tom Hanks, who's tasked by his superiors to lead a squad of soldiers behind enemy lines to save, surprise, surprise, a private called Ryan, played by Matt Damon, in order to send him home after his 3 brothers have all been killed in combat. Oh, and the cast also includes Tom Sizemore, Vin Diesel, Ted Danson, Edward Burns, Jeremy Davis, Barry Pepper, Bryan Cranston, Dennis Farina, Paul Giamatti, Nathan Fillion, and Phoebe's brother, and Chandler's crazy roommate from Friends.
What are you talking about?
The film began life in 1995 when producer Mark Gordon met with writer Robert Rodat to discuss potential projects. Gordon was a big fan of his previous work on movies like Tall Tale and Fly Away Home, and was keen to hire him for a new project, and within a few weeks Rodat conceived of an early version of Saving Private Ryan. He had been encouraged to write the story after visiting a monument in Keene, New Hampshire dedicated to American soldiers. He noticed the names of several brothers upon the gravestones, which gave him the idea to write a story about a soldier trying to get home after his brothers are all killed in combat. In fact, the Ryan family was based on the real-life story of the 4 Nyland brothers who were all deployed during World War II. 2 were killed, 1 was presumed dead, while the 4th was able to return home from the war. Gordon then founded the independent film studio Mutual Film Company alongside producer Gary Levinson, and the two brought Rodat's initial draft to Paramount Pictures, who responded positively and hired Rodat to develop the story into a screenplay over the following 12 months. Initially, Michael Bay was hired to direct, but he left the project because he couldn't figure out how to approach the material, and he then went off to decide to make a much worse film instead.
That guy's overrated.
The script then ended up in the hands of Karen Sage, a junior agent who represented Tom Hanks, who gave his client the script to read. Hanks loved it and immediately met with Gordon and Levinson to develop into a feature, and he later roped in our good old friend Stevie Boy to direct, as they had wanted to work together for some time. In fact, it was the signing of both Hanks and Spielberg that convinced Paramount that the project was worth prioritizing, and at long last, Saving Private Ryan was finally given the green light. Spielberg would claim World War II was the seminal conversation inside my family. My parents talked about the Holocaust, and they talked about combat and war, and I was born knowing this. My dad was a veteran. He had many veterans over to the house, and I became absolutely obsessed. It was all based on my father's stories, recollections, and also based on all the World War II movies. What? Spielberg obsessed with war, death, misery, and the Holocaust? But he hides it so well.
I don't have a good feeling about this one.
Now that Spielberg was on board, his companies DreamWorks and Amblin Entertainment both became involved as production financiers. However, the director's status within Hollywood effectively removed Gordon and Levinson from the production. Despite being among the main champions of the story prior to Steven's involvement, neither of them had any creative input beyond a producer's credit and a one-off payment. You just know going in what the score is. I guess it's unspoken that when you hire someone like Steven, you're not going to be on the set making decisions. Ouch. Well, who cares? Fuck him. It's Steven Spielberg!
I hear what you're saying.
Spielberg's initial concept for the movie was to present it as an adventure film, similar to the Boy's Own magazines he read as a child, in which the search for Ryan would be a PR effort by the entire War Department. However, when the director interviewed World War II veterans for research, he later deemed this approach inappropriate, and instead decided to depict a more realistic and less sanitized portrayal of the war, where the story's thematic depth came from the conflicted morality of sending soldiers into life or death situations, all to save one man.
I mean, where's the sense of risking the lives of the 8 of us to save one guy?
I cannot tell you how many veterans came up to me and said, please be honest about it. Please don't make another Hollywood movie about World War II. Please tell our stories. The story is about sending 8 people out, all of whom have parents, to rescue one boy and send him back to his mum when any or all of these kids along the mission route could be killed. That was the central tug that made me want to tell the story.
And that's how simple it is.
When it came to casting, Spielberg wanted a relatively unknown actor with an all-American look to portray Ryan, considering the likes of Edward Norton, Neil Patrick Harris and Ethan Hawke, until he saw Matt Damon's performance in Courage Under Fire. He was then introduced to Damon on the set of Good Will Hunting by his pal Robin Williams, and he liked him so much that he gave him the role on the spot. Although it is kind of ironic that they wanted an unknown actor, because Matt Damon then went and became really famous and won an Oscar all before this movie came out.
Thank you, you moron!
For the role of Homer, Horvath. Michael Madsen was Spielberg's first choice, but he turned him down, instead recommending his good friend Tom Sizemore for the part. However, this posed a big problem, as Sizemore was struggling with a severe drug addiction at the time, leaving the producers afraid that he would be unreliable during filming. Spielberg resolved this by presenting Sizemore with an ultimatum. The actor would be blood tested for drugs on set for every single day of production, and if he failed the test even once, he would be fired and his scenes reshot with a new actor, even if it was the last day of production. Jesus, no pressure, Tom.
A friendly neighborhood morale officer.
Thankfully, Sizemore agreed to the deal and he managed to pass all of his tests, though he would sadly relapse several times later in his career. Vin Diesel was cast after Spielberg was impressed with his debut feature, Multifacial. Well, there's nothing funny about the word facial.
Told you he was an asshole.
And Garth Brooks, Pete Postlethwaite, Mel Gibson, Thomas Hayden Church, Billy Bob Thornton, Tony Shalhoub, Clifton Collins Jr., Christopher Eccleston and Harrison Ford all auditioned or were considered for various other roles in the cast.
Who?
Filming eventually began in June 1997 in Ireland before later shifting to Hertfordshire and Normandy, but it wasn't easy. The opening action sequence on Omaha Beach took 4 weeks to film using around 1,500 extras in the background, which Spielberg found extremely difficult to keep in line. On top of that, the director decided to shoot the sequence like a documentary in order to make it more like a real-life firefight, with multiple cameras being operated at once to capture various different angles. However, the loose structuring of the scene combined with the obscene number of extras caused many of the camera crew to fall over or bang into each other, which made filming even more chaotic. All in all, the opening sequence alone cost the production around $12 million, nearly 20% of the film's entire budget. But it was fucking worth it! Look at that shit! Furthermore, Spielberg instructed the main cast members to undergo a grueling 6-day boot camp in order to better understand the soldier experience. However, he deliberately instructed Damon not to participate in order to increase the resentment that the other actors would feel for him, thereby mirroring the resentment felt by their characters. This man is a genius.
So are you making that up?
In addition, the level of graphic violence portrayed caused the film to be banned in numerous countries, such as India and Malaysia. But Stevie Wonderberg refused to tone any of the violence down, feeling that this would betray the film's realism. He even stated that had the MPAA rated the film NC-17, he would have still ordered it to be released uncut regardless. Are you telling me that a movie based on the most devastating and catastrophic war in human history portrayed violence? Saving Private Ryan was released on July the 24th, 1998 and was a gigantic hit, grossing $482 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of the year and the highest grossing World War II movie ever, a record it held for nearly 20 years until it was surpassed by Dunkirk in 2017. The film also received worldwide acclaim for its acting, directing and realistic depiction of combat, earning 5 Oscars for Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound Mixing and Best Sound Editing. However, the film controversially lost the Best Picture award to Shakespeare in Love, which is still considered one of the dumbest decisions the Academy has made to this day. And yet this shit has an Oscar and this shit won Best Picture!
Big mystery.
It was this movie's success that inspired Spielberg and Hanks to create the hit show Band of Brothers. The American Film Institute ranked it as the 71st greatest film of all time, and its popularity caused a resurgence in the study of World War II. It's often cited as one of the greatest war films of all time and one of the crowning achievements of Spielberg's career. In fact, I was even shown the opening sequence in school when I was studying history from a GCSEs. It was that much of an impact. The movie is actually told in flashback mode almost, before that trope was done to death, with this old chap who is elderly Matt Damon visiting a graveyard, and to be fair, he doesn't get much screen time, but this guy's acting is incredible. We return to him again at the end, and it's so emotional with some brilliant dialogue to close the film. There was actually a different ending that was shot, where Dennis Farina's character, Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, finds the dead body of Tom Hanks. Oh, spoilers, sorry.
I don't care.
But this was changed to instead have Ryan pay tribute to Miller at his grave, and I think this works a lot better. Then we go to Omaha Beach. Man, they don't even specify where Omaha Beach is. Lots of silly Americans are going to think it's in Nebraska.
We don't know.
But then we cut to a bunch of soldiers reacting to the subject matter of Spielberg's last 3 films. The effects are spectacular as they arrive in France and immediately begin getting gunned down. There is a lot of shaky cam, but you can tell the sheer amount of rehearsing and choreography that went into it considering the long takes. There's really tragic moments as some soldiers get killed in the other's arms, and I'm pretty sure Spielberg in this film created the trope of slow-mo kicking in with the audio cutting out as Tom Hanks watches the massacre taking place all around him. Yeah, take note DC, this is how you do it. It's absolutely devastating, but this was truly revolutionary filmmaking for its time, and a cliche that would sadly be imitated for years afterwards. Just like this shot, although a soldier casually walks around to pick up his own severed arm. Kind of ruins the moment. In fact, despite its subject matter, there are a couple of funny moments.
We stopped the bleeding! We stopped the bleeding!
Jesus! Come on, lucky bastard.
What is wrong with Spielberg? He is sick. Was that a cartoon sound effect? It was a cartoon sound effect! The effects are insane and truly shows the horror of the war. And there's no music either, which only adds to the realism of the scene. This is easily one of the greatest opening scenes I have ever witnessed. I am so going to die.
I'll do it. I'll go left.
I think my death scene is now due. And after 25 minutes of pure non-stop action, he finally gets a breather and so does the audience. It's a great way to end such an incredible sequence as he just glances over at all of the carnage. There's a subsequent scene where a woman gets paid a visit and it's brilliant. There's no dialogue, but we can already tell that she's lost a loved one. This is such a powerful film and Spielberg continues to impress. There's a character called Upham, played by Jeremy Davis, who isn't even an actual soldier. He's hired just to translate French and German, but he's probably my favourite character of the entire film. He's pressured and pretty much forced into combat despite having no experience, and I have never been more grateful to have been born when I was.
I haven't held a weapon since basic training, sir.
Did you fire the weapon in basic training?
Yes, sir.
Well, then get your gear.
Yes, sir.
There's a scene where they all proceed forwards into combat while he waits behind. Once he gets the all clear, he grabs their gear and follows with a big smile on his face. He can already tell that something tragic is about to happen because Stevie McMisery Guts is a sicko. Phoebe's brother from Friends dies in front of him with some amazing visuals and incredible acting across the board. But you can tell with Davis's performance, the reality is now sinking in that this is all very real. All he was due to do was translate, and now he's witnessing people dying in front of him. They then come across an apologetic German soldier, and Davis is the only one who's against killing him out of revenge. Everyone wants his guts on a stick, but he shows empathy and tries to talk them out of it.
He says he's sorry about Wade. He says he's sorry about Wade, sir. Prison. He surrendered. He surrendered, sir. This is bullshit. Shooting a prisoner, that'd be okay.
Shut your
That's
mouth.
against the goddamn rules!
Yeah, well, the goddamn rules just walked off with your new friend.
His performance is spectacular throughout, and I do think it's a really well-written character. Later on in the film, he heads up some stairs completely terrified as he desperately clutches hold of a gun, hearing screams of horror. He knows that he's probably going to die, but he also knows that he has to do the right thing, even if he's sometimes conflicted about what that actually is. But it's not just action throughout. There are some nice breaks, with the troops having standard conversations to give everyone a breather, which is nice. There's a line,
God gave me a special gift, made me a fine instrument of warfare.
which was actually improvised by Barry Pepper. In fact, there's also a standoff between Horvath and Reiben, in which the latter tries to desert the others, which is also improvised. There were complaints about a scene where the squad throw mortar rounds by hand at the German soldiers, calling it unrealistic. But in actuality, this was a real technique used by Medal of Honor recipient Charles Kelly during a battle in Italy in 1943. So ha! Tom Hanks does a great job in the lead, because he plays a bit of an asshole, polar opposite of real life.
The decent thing to do is to at least take you down the road to the next town. We're not here to do the decent thing, we're here to follow fucking order!
Even subtle touches like his hand often shaking throughout the film show that he's suffering from severe PTSD. It's brilliant. And he has some amazing lines of dialogue.
Do you know how many men I've lost under my command?
How many?
94. But that means I've saved the lives of 10 times that many, doesn't it? Back home, and I tell people what I do for a living, they think, well, now that figures. But over here, it's a big mystery.
When they lose one of their team, Hanks manages to hold it together, but then he storms off and breaks down crying. You can tell that it really breaks him, but he's trying to stay strong for the greater good. There's an awesome sequence where the soldiers are hiding, but Vin Diesel is dying out in the open, and a sniper spots him, which subsequently gives away the location of the others, and it's so intense. Oh, never mind. We're all good. A 12-year-old Nathan Fillion gets mistaken for Private Ryan, so in a weirdly morbid scene, he accidentally gets told that his brothers are all dead, and Fillion's reaction really isn't the best. It's not god-awful, but the acting isn't great. You can tell that he was still getting his footing as an actor at this point. But the editing doesn't help. What was with that cut? The continuity of his hand and head were completely off. I'm surprised the great flawless Spielberg let that one slide. Phoebe's brother from Friends is also really good and does have some great lines of dialogue too.
I knew she just wanted to find out about my day. That she came home early. Just to talk to me. And I still wouldn't move. I'd still pretend to just be asleep. I don't know why I did that.
It's even more heartbreaking when he dies, as he's the medic, and they're relying on him to give them first aid advice to try to save his life to no avail. There's still no music, but it subtly kicks in as he takes his final breath. When they finally find Matt Damon, his reaction to finding out that his brothers have kicked the bucket is far better than the previous guy. Damon is just a phenomenal talent. He even has to be convinced to leave his troops behind, and I'm surprised Damon wasn't confused by this guy looking fucking identical to his boyfriend Ben Affleck. He's just wonderful, and he even has some funny and charming moments.
There was my oldest brother, Dan. With Alice, Alice Jardine. I mean, picture a girl who just took a nosedive from the ugly tree and hit every branch coming down.
In fact, this entire story was completely improvised by Damon. Tom Hanks' awkward look to the side is actually him looking at Spielberg behind the camera, who motioned him to stay in character. Looks like he was channeling Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. Good man. We get to the big final battle and the effects continue to impress. It looks incredible. When Hanks loses his best mate, you can tell that he realizes instantly, but he just doesn't have enough time to mourn and has no choice but to power on through the grief. There's a cool shot where someone gets, well, shot, but we don't even see their body, just the blood trickling past the doorway. Oh, alright then. Much like Schindler's, I do think some of it could have maybe been briefly trimmed in the third act, but it's nothing major. You're never begging for the credits or anything. But it means so much more when Hanks gets shot. After such a long journey and nearly 3 hours with the dude, it is devastating to see. What the hell? Oh, okay. It's actually really clever. But it's such a devastating moment when he dies, and that kind of summarizes the entire movie. It's difficult to watch knowing that these things actually happened, but it's a story that really captures your attention and you become engrossed in, and sometimes grossed out with. The characters are likable and memorable, and you beg for them to make it out okay. And all I can really end this with is by saying Spielberg continues to impress with yet another masterpiece that certainly belongs in the 1001. Oh, spoilers. Fucking plain.